With The Elder Scrolls Online Update 46, we're going to see a brand new content model, that being Seasons, or specifically Season of the Worm Cult. Well, with Seasons being the new mode of delivering content, it means we can say goodbye to the traditional chapters as we've known them. So, in giving a fond farewell to the old content model, I'm going to rank every chapter in DLC just for the fun of it. My name's Doc, and before we get into the actual rankings, I want to give a couple quick disclaimers. The first and most important thing is that I'll be ranking these chapters and DLCs in groups. So like when I say Morrowind, I'm also including the rest of the Year 2 content like Clockwork City, the couple dungeon packs, stuff like that. I'll still be talking about and taking into account those other smaller DLCs when doing the overall ranking, but it just didn't feel fair to compare something like a dungeon pack to a full-blown chapter. The other thing is, this is totally just my opinion. You're welcome to agree or disagree with me completely, as my taste may be different than yours. And just because I rank something low doesn't mean that I don't love it. When I make this list, comparing the lowest DLC and the highest is like comparing gold to diamonds. In my eyes, they're all awesome, but some are just a little more awesome than others. So let's get into these rankings. At number 9, we have Blackwood. Released in 2021, this chapter includes the Blackwood Zone, the Rockgrove Trial, and introduced companions. In the same year, we also had the Flames of Ambition and Waking Flame dungeon packs, as well as the Deadlands DLC, which includes the Deadlands and Fargrave zones and stories. In my humble opinion, the introduction of companions and the two excellent dungeon packs gave 2021 a lot of good things. Companions have become a pretty fundamental part of the game that every player can enjoy, but solo players saw a tremendous amount of value from getting this chapter. Outside of that though, the actual zones and stories just personally weren't really my thing. Rockgrove is fine, it's a fine trial, but it's far from my favorite. The Blackwood Zone, in my opinion, would be my personal example of bigger does not always mean better. I'm sure there are people that adored how large the zone was, but for me, I wasn't really a huge fan of the aesthetic to begin with, but the size of the zone just felt like it slowed down the pacing of the story a little bit, and of course, there's getting crafting surveys in there too, that is a different story. Speaking of the story, I also thought it was just fine. The Cult of Mehrunes Dagon was an interesting bunch of antagonists, but longtime viewers of the channel know that I don't enjoy the Daedric storylines quite as much as some of the others that don't involve the Daedra. Again, Blackwood is still a great DLC, but it's just that, to me, everything else is even better. Moving on to our next chapter, we have number 8, Gold Road. Released in 2024, this chapter gave us the Westweald Zone, the spell scribing system, and the Lucent Citadel trial. I'll also be including the Scions of Athelia dungeon pack in this chapter as well. Right off the bat, the art team went absolutely nuts for this entire year. Westweald is a stunningly gorgeous, pretty, beautiful, whatever you want to call it, all of those words, zone. There's no denying that. Plus, Lucent Citadel and the dungeons included a ton of unique and stunning visuals as well. Lucent Citadel, as a trial, while still not one of my favorites, is an undeniably fun experience with very interesting mechanics, and it's kind of middle of the pack for me. Where the chapter kind of fell short for me personally was the story. A pretty common criticism was that a lot of people weren't a fan of Athelia's design, and the ending left something to be desired. I also just personally felt like the epilogue was a little bit long, kind of overstayed its welcome, and they probably could have just maybe turned some of that into more zone quests. Overall, though, still a very solid DLC, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it over the past year, but it only gets better from here. So up next, we have number 7, Necrom. Released in 2023, this chapter gave us the Telvanni Peninsula Zone, the Apocrypha Zone, the Arcanist class, the Infinite Archive, and the Sanity's Edge trial. I'll also be including the Scribes of Fate dungeon pack. Much like Gold Road, the art team popped off, dude. Telvanni Peninsula, it's fine. I'm not a huge fan of the Morrowind aesthetic, but I know there are a lot of people that really love it. Apocrypha, though? Oh my gosh, I cannot express to you how cool that zone is. Hermaeus Mora is already my favorite Daedric prince, but the Lovecraftian design with the Elder Scrolls twist was just phenomenal. The Arcanist class is also just really fun and strong for all 3 roles, plus the Infinite Archive adds a lot of replay value in competition. The only reason Necrom isn't higher is, again, just that the story was fine. I don't really have any criticisms of it, but outside of interacting with Mora, it just didn't really leave any lasting impact on me. Sanity's Edge is also just kind of the same. It's a cool trial, but still towards the bottom of my list of favorites. Overall, though, a great DLC. But now, it's on to number 6, High Isle. Released in 2022, this chapter gave us the High Isle Zone, the Tales of Tribute minigame, and the Dreadsail Reef trial. I'll also be including the Ascending Tide and Lost Depths dungeon packs, as well as the Firesong DLC, which gave us the Galen Zone. Where do I start with this one? Well, probably with that fantastic cinematic trailer that saw ESO actually achieve some very mainstream popularity. And to its credit, that was a really, really good cinematic. I loved it. Seriously, go watch it if you haven't. The zones and aesthetics are beautiful, encompassing both the Arthurian architecture of the Bretons with the magical tropical paradise of Somerset. As someone who pretty much always plays a Breton in every Elder Scrolls game, this zone kind of felt like it was made for me. The Dreadsail Reef trial is one of my personal favorite trials in the game, both aesthetically and mechanically. Tales of Tribute exists. Finally, the story was solid. I won't spoil anything, but it did feel a bit inconsequential since we, as players, know that the thing the antagonists were trying to stop wasn't going to be completed anyway, since that would disrupt a fundamental part of the game, that being Cyrodiil. Regardless, though, I thought that the story was pretty well written, and the antagonists are an interesting bunch that I hope we see again. In our next spot, we have number 5, Orsinium. Released in 2015, this isn't really a chapter per se, but it's the first chapter-sized DLC that ESO released. It gave us the Hrothgar Zone and the Maelstrom Arena. I'll also be including the Imperial City DLC, the Thieves Guild DLC, which gave us the Thieves Guild skill line, Hughesbane Zone, and Maw of Lorcaj trial, and the Dark Brotherhood DLC, which gave us the Dark Brotherhood skill line and the Gold Coast Zone. Again, I know this one is kind of cheating, but they're all part of the Guilds in Glory year, so I'm grouping them together. The Imperial City is definitely a sight to behold and does a fantastic job of visual storytelling. That is, if you actually have the opportunity to enjoy the scenery, but you'll probably be busy swatting at corners while you're looking for the 14th invisible ganking Nightblade that's sitting outside your base. Hrothgar, despite being pretty much the first real DLC, was honestly very well written, and the story really gripped me. I could say mostly the same about the Thieves Guild and Dark Brotherhood stories too. While those factions weren't quite as strong for me as they were in many of the single-player Elder Scrolls games, you could definitely feel the difference in storytelling from the base game. All 3 zones are also very well designed, with Hrothgar being especially beautiful. Maw of Lorcaj, while pretty middle of the pack for me, is still a solid and enjoyable trial that I do like coming back to. Next on the list, I might get a little backlash for having this one so low, but number 4 is Morrowind. Whoa, hey, don't go down to the comments yet. Let me explain. So, the Morrowind chapter was released in 2017 and includes the Vardenfell Zone, the Warden class, and the Halls of Fabrication trial. I'll also be including the Shadows of the Hist and Horns of the Reach dungeon packs, as well as the Clockwork City DLC, which added the Clockwork City Zone, Asylum Sanctorium mini trial, and Transmutation. Now, a lot of people may be surprised that Morrowind is this low, and rightfully so. To a lot of people, this is their favorite chapter. It's just not mine. It's up there, but it's not my favorite. This was the first real chapter, and pound for pound, it added arguably the largest amount of content of any chapter to date. While I wasn't a huge fan of the Clockwork City, just as a whole, outside of maybe Transmutation, the Morrowind story is exciting, well-written, and cinematic. The Halls of Fabrication is one of my personal favorite trials in the game, with Asylum Sanctorium being lower, but not too terribly far behind. The Warden, while not the flashiest class, is exceptionally strong in the healing role, and isn't too bad in the other roles either. Transmutation was a wonderful quality of life system that I couldn't imagine playing the game without. My only real complaint is just that I've never really cared for Morrowind's art style, but that's a personal preference and not a real criticism. So why isn't Morrowind higher? Simply because my top 3 DLC choices are, in my opinion, some of the best content this game has ever put out. So up next, let's talk about number 3, Summerset. Released in 2018, this chapter gave us the Summerset Zone, the Artaeum Zone, the Psijic Order skill line, the jewelry crafting system, and the Cloud Rest mini-trial. I'll also be including the Dragon Bones and Wolf Hunter dungeon packs, as well as the Murkmire DLC, which gave us the Murkmire Zone and the Black Rose Prison Arena. So what's not to love about this DLC? To start, Summerset's art design is nearly flawless. There's a reason that the Grand Psijic Villa was such a sought-after house for so long. The zone is truly just gorgeous in every way. The story was also solid. No complaints here. Nothing too crazy memorable, but solid, and I enjoyed it. The Psijic Order skill line, while not one of my favorite skill lines to grind through, is still very interesting for those who care about the lore or magic factions of the Elder Scrolls. The skills you can get from it aren't half bad either. Jewelry crafting has become a staple in build crafting, and like transmutation, I couldn't imagine this game without it. Murkmire is also pretty solid, with Black Rose Prison being a fun and challenging experience. And finally, Cloud Rest is a fantastic trial. Very, very far up there as one of my favorites in the game. I absolutely love nearly everything about Summerset. But these last two, they are peak ESO in my humble opinion. So let's move on to number 2, Greymoor. Released in 2020, Greymoor introduced the Western Skyrim Zone, the Blackreach Greymoor Zone, the Antiquity System, and the Kyne's Aegis Trial. I'll also be including the Harrowstorm and Stonethorn dungeon packs, as well as the Markarth DLC, which gave us the Reach Zone, more Blackreach, and the Vat'sharan Hollows Arena. I can't begin to express how much I love this DLC. The first thing to note, for me personally, is the hit of nostalgia you get from the Western Skyrim Zone. See, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim is literally my single favorite video game of all time, bar none. So this DLC made me feel like a teenager again. Of course, having the Skyrim story revolving around fighting a vampire lord is also a fantastic homage to Skyrim's Dawnguard DLC. The Antiquity system introduced Mythics, which was a huge change to many popular meta builds and is still very impactful to this day. On top of that, Kyne's Aegis is probably my second favorite trial in the game. The Markarth DLC was also very strong, especially since it introduced Vat'sharan Hollows, a solo arena that's pretty challenging and a lot of fun to play through. So then, if Greymoor is my second favorite, that means there's only one DLC left to talk about, and that's our number 1 spot, Elsweyr. Released in 2019, this chapter introduced the Northern Elsweyr Zone, the Necromancer class, and the Sunspire Trial. I'll also be including the Wrathstone and Scalebreaker dungeon packs, as well as the Dragonhold DLC, which gave us the Southern Elsweyr Zone. So, what makes this my favorite? Well, in my personal opinion, this DLC is everything I could want. While the Elsweyr zones aren't always the easiest to navigate, there's no denying that they're beautifully designed zones with a just absolutely chock full of interesting lore. Above that, though, I'm fascinated by Khajiit culture in the Elder Scrolls, mainly because they seem to have a much more interesting relationship with the magic systems in this franchise than many of the other races. What with their relationship to the moons, or the Alfiq's inherent proficiency with magic, or stuff like that. Also, as silly as it is, even beyond all of that, I'm a sucker for dragons, man. I love a good dragon fight. I love stories revolving around dragons. I love dragon lore, all of it. It's why I truly enjoy the dragon hunts in Elsweyr so much. And it's also part of what makes the story so intriguing to me, as well as what makes Sunspire my single favorite trial of all time. The Necromancer class, while not quite the powerhouse it used to be, is still a very unique and interesting class that makes for some very, very fun healer builds. Overall, Elsweyr may not be everyone's favorite, but it sure is mine. And there we have it. From there, we just recently had the Fallen Banners dungeon pack, and it's almost time for Season of the Wormcult. I'll try to keep this outro short because I'm now on page 6 of my script, and I don't want to make this video too terribly long. As always, though, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what your favorite DLC is and why it's your favorite. Don't forget to subscribe and check out the link below so you can follow me on stuff and join my Discord server. I also want to take a moment to thank my Patreon supporters Dylan Stewart and Sharni Lee, as well as my YouTube members Austin Anderson and Durgy. Thank you guys for your continued support, and you guys are seriously the best. I think all I've got left to say is that I've been Doc. Take care of yourselves, be good to others, don't forget to come join my Discord server, and I will catch y'all in the next one.